good. I can give you a brief introduction, and then you can give better introduction.
Okay.
Yeah. So thanks for stopping by. Hey. Thanks for coming to our presentation. We have some great folks that have some really interesting campaigns and stuff from, are they going to be all Pacer and Fever related?
Pacers Sports and Entertainment, yeah, so Pacers Fever are going to be the two we're going to look at.
Yeah, so we've got a crack team of design and development, and I've been telling people you're kind of both, right, Andy?
Kind of both.
You're in both, and you're developing your design.
Yeah.
Love it, love it. So we have, those categories of things that we teach here, so it's good to hear how the different jobs factor into creating an awesome campaign here. And, but we have, well, first off, I'm Josh Polk. I think I don't have all of you, but I'm director of the themed entertainment program here, and we have Jenny Tod with us, who is a Heron grad and is an awesome artist and has her own company. And we have Sheley, who sat in my classes and probably heard some of their stuff, and connected him with Andy here, and started working with Andy. And Andy is a developer, contractor, some design, and has done some great stuff for companies around town here. So
Yeah.
Appreciate you coming, and you can add on to your to that short intro if you'd like.
Okay. Thanks, Josh.
Yeah.
Great to be here, everybody. I have the privilege of having the longest title in Pacers Sports and Entertainment. I'm Associate Director of Digital Experience, but UX and Web Development, and I've been with Pacers Sports and Entertainment for 7 years. It's my 7th season, and really my role with Pacers Sports and Entertainment, actually, and to step back, is the Indiana Pacers, Indiana Fever, Noblesville Boom, which is freshly minted brand, and Pacers Foundation, which is our foundation work. And Zach and I every day manage all the web entities that roll within those brands. So introducing Zach. Zach, you've been with us for about almost a year now. Zach, as Josh mentioned, is a graduate of this program, and he's been phenomenal. He's leveled us up in so many ways, so much so that I think I should probably go through this program just to kind of like get some of that, whatever he got from here. And then we brought in Jenny because we needed some serious design help, and we needed some help with our design processes. And so Jenny, like Josh mentioned, has her own business, but she consults to us, and she has specifically in the design world. So we all kind of work together in various ways to do the projects that we do. Today we're going to actually talk about three of those projects, those initiatives that we've done really in the last, I don't know, it's been about 4 months, but it seems like, we've done a lot in 4 months. We pack a lot of things in. So the first project we're going to talk about today is with the Indiana Fever. It was a collaboration project that we did with Netflix, Stranger Things, and just briefly with the second project, we're going to talk a little bit about a rebrand and a rebuild of a website that we do with the Pacers Foundation, and the third one will be with the Pacers with our ticketing section. And as you can imagine, ticketing is very important. It's a big responsibility to make sure that the experience for buying tickets is like top notch. There's no limitations or nothing to interfere with buying tickets. And so we always we would put a lot of investment into that kind of thing. So the first one we're going to start with today. So we did a collaboration this past season with the Fever. As the Fever has risen in popularity, it's Stranger Things, obviously, and other organizations, Netflix, took notice, and they wanted to be a part of what we were doing. And so with that, we had our own Indiana Fever Stranger Things uniforms. You might have seen those. And but we also had all kinds of digital work throughout the arena and in all of our digital social media packages and everything. And so it was a huge undertaking because, as you can imagine, Netflix wants to protect their brand. We want to protect our brand. And so you have to collaborate a lot from a design standpoint. And so approvals and all kinds of things, legal and all kinds of things to make something like that work. And so, so it was a really fun project. It was very successful. We'll talk about the success of it in a second. But to start off with, like, really how we rolled this out, I'll turn it over to Jenny to talk a little bit about the design and how all this came to be.
Yeah, so I was kind of given the task of coming in and saying, okay, we've got these brands, and we have to figure out how we merge them together in a way that is successful not only visually and with the words, but then also with the usability of it. So you've got to factor in how people are going to interact with it, how they're going to experience it. Is it going to be on brand? Is everybody going to be happy? So there's kind of a lot of facets here at play. And we were looking specifically at this part we're going to talk about first is kind of a visual update for the team store, kind of a takeover, so that it would reflect the Stranger Things and Fever collab. So kind of the first element was understanding, okay, what are the brand elements we need to take into account? So I put up here kind of, you've got the different graphic elements. So a lot of these were provided to our team from the internal teams at Pacer Sports and Entertainment. They have an entire department that's focused on marketing and creative and visual. So they provided us, our team, with kind of the updated brand elements from that you're seeing over there on the left. You've got the Fever logo update and some different typography treatments for that, the 11 number to kind of pull in. You've got color palette, so obviously the red is iconic with the Fever, but we were using it in a different way, kind of pairing it with the black and the white. You've got typography updates. So this is, you know, what it looked like before, and it's kind of like, okay, how do we take this and visually manifest this new brand in a way that works? And so then the next kind of element was like, okay, we want to go really dark with this, because if you've seen Stranger Things, you know, kind of like you're entering into the upside down, and there's kind of a visual look and feel for that. Kind of how do we bring this kind of like red illuminating gradient in? So these were all the things that we were kind of weighing. How do we visually manifest this in the design? And so this is kind of the screenshot of where we landed. So from a design perspective, my process, I kind of worked through a few different iterations. I shared it with these guys. We kind of went back and forth on what do we think will be the most successful from a visual standpoint, but also something that doesn't feel so different that the viewer that's coming to the team store won't know how to work it or interact with it. Because I had some crazy wonky ideas of like, everything flips upside down, and like, you know, so many cool things that like in theory seem really interesting, but then you've got to kind of, I went in my process, I kind of always like expand on all the ideas, and then I kind of rein them in and hone in on like, how can we do this successfully, but also make it so that people can use it. And I think we decided if everything flips upside down, I don't think people will know how to navigate the page very well. So, so we landed on something like this where you can still kind of see the lighter at the top. You can toggle between the spaces still like you can in the team store, but now you've kind of got this like dark takeover. So you've got a darker black and red background, some of the kind of neon elements that are kind of vibrant. And then we also wanted to integrate some white spaces too, because just an entirely dark site felt so overwhelming. So we pulled in some white sections to really highlight the contrast between the white background and the dark merch. So we kind of start to see that down here. We also had to obviously consider the mobile experience. This is just kind of some sections deeper down the page. So while doing this, we were also kind of thinking, how can we enhance what's already on the team store? Could we start to work in some of the the different brands, and you could filter by that, or you know, could we section things off? And so always thinking about how we can continually improve. When we have something great to start with, that always helps too. So thinking about mobile and how that's going to display, super important with the way that people interact with this, you know, the team store already. So, and then the only other thing I'll hit on too that we also did, which Zach's going to talk a little bit more about from a dev standpoint, is we also created an additional landing page when the teams do these campaigns, they like to have a place to send people to learn more about the overall vision, some of the elements, the experience, things like that, stuff that went into it. So we did kind of a landing page that reflected the design, wasn't exactly the same, but felt like they could correspond with each other. So we wanted them to feel collaborative with one another, but not quite on the nose, so similar to each other. So we did an intro, we kind of highlighted some of the merch, the players, and then, you know, jerseys and graphics and photography, and then we wanted to highlight when they were going to be wearing the uniforms. So I think with that, I will pass it over to Zach to touch on the dev side.
Yeah, so for the development, these are some of the tools we get to use. So I was always fascinated when I was a student, anyone came and spoke about anything they created, I was always curious, like, okay, what are you actually like using to make this? Because in the development world, there's so many different tools and options that you can use, and it's always changing. So these are tools we use. We use React and Next.js, and then some of the styling options, Bootstrap, Sass, and then Shopify we used for is what the team store uses. So we kind of had to use that. That was kind of a limitation, is that we couldn't just straight up code whatever we wanted. We kind of had to work around what Shopify had and kind of override some of that styling to kind of create what Jenny had brought to life there. So this is what the kind of drag and drop editor of Shopify looks like. So if you've used WordPress or something like that, it's very similar to that. This kind of shows just like one of the elements that Jenny created of how we created that in Shopify. So first, to create this page, we had to drop all of the elements on the actual page. And so here we used just an HTML block, dropped in an image, some text. And so that in Shopify, you can see even down on the left there, it has all the different elements that are on this page, because we can't add that through code, just because of the limitations of Shopify. And so once we have all these elements on the page, we can then use CSS and kind of override all this styling on here to change the background, to add the different images, to add those kind of like background elements, like the 11, and just throughout the page, we can add those different elements just on top of Shopify, while also creating that cohesive look, making it look like it's a custom built environment.
Is there ever, sorry, I'm gonna ask a question.
Yeah, go for it.
Because I'm interested. I feel like something that I love about these guys is like, I will do some crazy, what I think is crazy design. Obviously I know the limitations of what can be built within a UI, but I still do some stuff that feels like this might not be possible, and I feel like you guys always figure it out. Is there like a ton of like trial and error you have to do, or is everything like super straightforward in the way that you do it?
Yeah, it's normally not straightforward. So
Okay.
a lot of times we're kind of charged with like, Jenny brings us this amazing design. We're like, okay, how are we gonna build this?
Yeah.
Like now we're charged with bringing this thing to life. So yeah, especially when it's our custom environment where it's just code, we have a little bit more flexibility of like, okay, there's different ways we can do this. But with Shopify, it was kind of like, okay, how are we gonna like add some of these background elements? So some of these are just like pseudo elements. If you know development, like some of those are just like it sticks on the page right there. But yeah, there's a lot of like trying to figure out, okay, she wants it to like these to be right next to each other. How can we mess with the spacing? How can we? So it's a lot of creativity and trying to figure out. Let me try this. Okay, this doesn't work on mobile. So like, how can we make it mobile friendly as well? So there's a lot of different things we have to think about of like, okay, now that we have this design, how can we kind of bring this to life in a way that matches the expectation, but then also is like user friendly and able to click around and that kind of thing. Yeah.
Could I ask real quick? So in here, AI is like a double-edged sword. Okay, it's everywhere. Sometimes I want my students to use it, and sometimes I don't, because it's really important for them to be able to do exactly what you're just. Do you hear that? Do you hear what you just said? But do you use AI, or can you use AI effectively to solve those kind of nitty-gritty types of problems?
Yeah, I more often use, I mean personally, I think we all use AI slightly differently, but
Yeah.
personally I more use it as a troubleshooting tool. So a lot of times if I'll try and build it myself first, but if there's like, I'm getting an error, or like there's something that's not working, or I'm like, there's gotta be an easier way to do this than what I'm thinking. So sometimes I'll just kind of like, either I'll just give it like a piece of code and say like, hey, what am I doing wrong here? And it'll kind of be like, oh, here's some different ways that it's doing wrong. Or I kind of use it as like a soundboard of just like someone to talk through something with. So I'm like, hey, here's what I'm trying to do. I'm describing what I'm trying to do. what do you think the best way or most efficient way to do this would be? So it kind of lays out some options. Then I kind of go through there and like, okay, I think this second option would be best for our use case. So I kind of, yeah.
Would you say, like, and I know it's kind of hard to give it a percentage, but would you say that AI genuinely helps you 25% of the time, 50% of the time?
For me personally, it's probably more like 20%. So it's not
Yeah.
like, the vast majority of the stuff we do is not AI related.
Yeah.
But there are, especially in more complex use cases, I think AI is like a great tool to use because it definitely speeds things up. Of like, I use it in cases where instead of looking up documentation and like looking at Stack Overflow and looking through
Yeah, 'cause you have
different articles online, it can kind of bring that cohesively in and like tell me, okay, for your specific use case, this is what would be most beneficial. Instead of like me spending like 30 minutes trying to figure out what the best option is. Oh, this worked for this person. Oh, well, that's an outdated solution. So now I have to find a new solution. So AI kind of simplifies that
like,
process.
what do you use? Is it like ChatGPT, Copilot, or do you have your proprietary engine, or?
Yeah, I use one that Vercel created. So they're a hosting platform. If anyone is familiar with, there's coding specific AI. Yeah, but ChatGPT sometimes just for like, that's more of like if I'm just bouncing ideas off or just talking through a problem.
And you don't worry about security like other?
Yeah, we do have to worry about like, I can't give any code that like we've created or anything like that because that's proprietary, but and a lot of times I'll keep my questions like generic of like, I won't be like, I'm building a Pacers website and I need to know, like I'm just like, hey, I'm building a website, I need to know how to do this. So it's like, I just keep the questions generic, and so I just keep that in mind as I'm using it just to make sure we don't run into the issues there.
Another use case, so when we have a calendar release every year, we generally do, we'll like pay for a service to like put our calendar together so people can download the calendar to their personal calendars. And we were thinking, okay, how are we gonna do this year? Because like we could build it ourselves, but it's a manual process. There's 80 some games, whatever. And so one Zach was like, well, maybe we could kind of use AI as like to build that for us as an efficiency tool, So he took the Excel sheet, put it in there, and it created the ICS file for us to be able to put on our site. And of course, you do want to be concerned about security and everything, and making sure it's, the file is appropriate and everything. But that would have been something that would have taken us a day to manually put in, or whatever, a half a day. Whereas that was something, it was just a nice efficiency helper, So that's like another just use case, I guess, of how we would generally use it. But Zach is great about just like, he knows the foundation of the CSS and the JavaScript and React and all of those things. Without that knowledge that he has and what he, the skill and talent that he has, like he probably wouldn't be able to use AI as effectively as he could as like a troubleshooting service or that type of thing. So I think you really do need to have that foundation before you can want to layer that on.
I know we're talking mostly development. From a design perspective, I would say very similar in that like I'm using it as one of my tools, one of my elements that I'm adding to everything else I'm doing. So if I didn't understand the strategy and the overall vision and couldn't understand like how I'm gonna lay things out, I wouldn't be able to use the AI on top of that. But things like, in these cases, and I don't want to speak for the brand team, but in these cases, a lot of times like we'll mock up the jerseys on the players because they might not be real yet. And so then it's like having built-in tools within Adobe that are able to use AI on top of like Firefly. It allows me to like add her arm. Like if her arm gets cut off, I can add her arm back. But like we wouldn't be creating things from scratch, especially in likenesses of players and things like that. Same thing with like a background image. I need to tweak this to fit the style of something that I'm wanting to do, but I'm sourcing the image and I'm altering it. I'm not creating anything brand new from scratch because it's not approved, licensed, all that kind of thing. So it's just an additional tool to layer on top of, just like these guys are doing, like on top of the stuff that I'm already building and working on.
Yeah, and I feel like there's always a lot of quality check that comes with it too, because like a lot of times, I mean, rarely have I had AI generate code that just immediately works if I just copy paste it. So there's a lot of times I'm like, okay, this is the general concept it's going for. Now I understand how it's like what it's going for, so I can kind of take a piece of that, like shape it into what I need for my use case, and then build it out from there. But yeah, it's rare that you can just like create it and then just like throw it in there, because a lot of times that just causes more problem in the future. So yeah, there's definitely a lot of quality check, and like creating that like ICS file from there. We definitely have to quality check to make sure all the games are correct, because if we just throw that in a calendar, people download it, and it's like random stuff going on in there, it's a major quality check thing. So yeah, good question. Yeah. So this is the secondary landing page that she showed off. So that first page was the team store site. So that's where people were purchasing merch and that kind of thing. And this was just a landing page in our custom development environment. So this was just about the brand itself. So it has like imagery of the different logos that were used and the jerseys. And at the bottom was those different games that the jerseys would be worn. So that like at the bottom, it's actually pulling in like a game feed through an API. And we're like styling it and then showing what games are available. So this is just kind of like what that code looks like, even if you're not a developer. I know Jenny said as a non-developer, she's kind of interested to see like what this stuff looks like. So this is just kind of like what that top piece looks like of bringing an image, like bringing how this different styling relates, and it's how we manipulate that styling within CSS, and then kind of what that React environment looks like.
Yeah, and this really was the final product. So like Zach mentioned, this was the team store, branded, and just kind of how it might look on a desktop. We also, yeah, and then really it was a very successful project. Actually, this was the big number right here, was the highest single day sales record that we had online. So so that just shows like, you know, first of all, the popularity of the brand, both brands. You know, they thought the jersey was cool, but there were no limiting factors either from the design standpoint or development standpoint that would prevent somebody from making the purchase that they wanted, or finding the jersey they wanted, or finding out more about detail. I think some of the things that Jenny is so good about is just kind of like pulling out little things from a design standpoint that you know, can kind of sell a product or sell a jersey or that type of thing. So that was a huge deal for the company. The stats are just, you know, enormous. Most page views across Pacers and Fever site, #1, and launch day page views over 400,000. So crazy successful. We're always wanting to promote our brands, you know, effectively and properly, and this project was a great shining example of that being done. So so they nailed it, and you can see some of the additional things that we had throughout. This was in the team store here. You know, we had kind of some floor decals and all kinds of stuff, blacked out walls, that type of thing. I mean, the whole arena was themed that way. You got some of the digital art going on some of the banners and on the center board, and then you can kind of see the jerseys a little more in detail with that, and just really sharp. A lot of people loved it, obviously, with the sales that we had, but just really from overall campaign was very successful for the whole organization. So, and then I think we're gonna go ahead and talk about Pacers Foundation. So we're gonna shift a little bit to another entity of Pacers Sports and Entertainment. This is Pacers Foundation. You may see like little Pacers license plates, that kind of thing throughout town. All of that kind of is stuff that goes towards our foundation. Our foundation is kind of like a community arm, mostly locally, but throughout the state of Indiana. There's all kinds of things like grants and scholarships and things that the organization provides, but also like boots on the ground kind of stuff that the foundation also provides. So it's sort of like an outreach, but it's even more than that, just kind of like a community building type initiative that Pacers Sports and Entertainment has. And so this was kind of the before, and I'll let Jenny talk about the design because there were some unique challenges with this. One unique challenge, and then I'll let you talk about it more, was the fact that this looks like the Pacers, like Pacers Foundation, but Pacers Sports and Entertainment is much larger than just the Pacers. It's the Fever, and it's the Boom, and it's all these other things. And we want to, with the rise of our Fever fan base, we want to make sure that when people come here, they're like, well, I want to find like the Fever version of this. Like, how do I do this for the Fever? And so that was a unique challenge that we needed to tackle, and we did that through both design and development. So why don't you talk about that a little bit more?
Cool. Yeah, so this was a fun one for me, mainly because when the team came to me, I was kind of able to actually help kind of structure and organize the site too, like in collaboration with them, kind of help to figure out what's the story we want to tell, because it had kind of just been a hodgepodge of like, hey, we got to get this video up and we got to add these numbers, and so everything had kind of been Frankensteined a little bit before, effectively, because these guys I think did it, but like we just knew that there was room for improvement. So I was excited to be able to like kind of figure out what the story was that we wanted to tell. So like Andy said, the biggest challenge that we talked with Corey about, runs it, was like, we really want this to highlight the Fever as well. And I actually thought it was really interesting that I didn't realize, and I think maybe you guys told me this, but the Pacers Foundation was created before the Fever existed. And so that was a big reason why there was no tie originally to the Fever team, is because it was just the Pacers. So it made sense. And so obviously not wanting to do a rebrand for this necessarily, but thinking of how can we take what we have and how can we work with it and how can we adapt it. And so I kind of came to the team with this cool idea of like, what if we have these two modes where you can actually change the mode when you land, so you can see it in Fever mode or you can see it in Pacers mode. And so you'll kind of see like up here, there's these bars across the top. This is kind of showing both of them. So when you land, by default, it would take on whatever mode the team selects that they want at that time. So if it's in Fever season, probably Fever mode. If it's in Pacers season, maybe Pacers mode. And then you'd be able to toggle if you were like, well, I love the Fever more, so I want to see it in that mode. You'd be able to switch it. And so obviously, me again here giving these guys a really difficult challenge, but I was like, this would be a really cool way to then be able to highlight like Freddie Fever and some of the Fever players more, because obviously you only have so much real estate to do that, but by flipping back and forth, you give more room for highlighting females and women and males and men here. And so wanted to kind of play off of that. So everything is an exact replica. It's just an updated image, color palette. So we kept the navy because that's obviously the tie between the two, and then we pulled in the red and used that more for the Fever, and then we used the gold for the Pacers. So you'll kind of like throughout the whole site, everything kind of switched back and forth. It was just a really cool experience, and I don't know if you guys want to touch on it at all, but they killed it when it came to the design. They did such a good, or the development, they did such a good job with implementing my crazy idea like they always do. But I think it turned out really successfully because it helped to really communicate that idea. So that was a big design challenge. We also wanted to make it feel like kind of its own brand, but like close enough to Pacers Sports and Entertainment as a whole, the Pacers and the Fever, that if you saw it, you wouldn't feel like there was a huge disconnect, but we didn't want every element and item to feel like a shot.
Okay.
Sorry, a shot for shot kind of remake. So that was a big challenge that we were trying to work through.
One additional note while she's talking about that on that switcher. So depending on the current active season, because Fever and Pacer season are on different times of the year, we can set it to be the default. So like if it's Fever season, we'll go ahead and set Fever to the default. That way, if you're coming to the site, generally during season we're promoting it at games, that type of thing, that you're going to land on your Fever part. The other piece is we have URL basically watchers. So based on what your URL that is sending you to this site, it will default to those locations too. So we'll put parameters in either in a URL string to say, oh, this is a Fever, this is coming from like maybe a Fever ad that we have on Facebook or something, and it will default to those modes. And that way it's kind of setting that, and then it puts a cookie on in their browser just to say like, okay, this individual prefers the Fever, and then so every time they come back, they're just going to get fever content and any sort of tailored content to what their preferences are. So,
That's great. Yeah, the only other thing I'll just mention is we wanted to make sure we told the story of the impact that the foundation was making. I think that was a big thing that was lacking before, and so really wanted to start out the page by highlighting what's happening. So that was kind of the top area. We had different, you can actually rotate through and see some of the most recent events or happenings, but then immediately getting right to the impact that's being made through what the foundation is doing, and then actually highlighting kind of the three main areas that they're targeting. So that's what you're seeing down here. So those are the game of basketball in youth and hunger, helping fight hunger. So the things that were really important to the foundation, we wanted to highlight those. So just kind of making sure that flow and that story is being told. That comes through the design and the words and all of that. So, and then obviously figuring out how to make it mobile friendly as well, and really well received on responsive devices was really important too. We also focused a lot on accessibility. I know we checked a lot of things. We wanted to make sure that anyone and everyone that's coming here is going to have the best possible chance of seeing everything, and that it will hit all the marks when it comes to accessibility. So.
Sorry, those pages, that's React, right? Those.
This actually was built in WordPress, so we built this one in WordPress because our foundation group needs to be able to manage it, needs to be able to update, add news, and all of that. So it's from scratch, but it was used. WordPress Elementor is the kind of the CMS system. Makes it really easy for them to kind of drag and drop content, and then otherwise SAS and SCSS. So. Okay, and one of the other challenges on this was so there was a huge disconnect with our old site to people donating and giving, and we used a Square Up is our Square, the card thing, as our system to do that, but it was not integrated with the site. It was something where they had to click on a donate button, and then it would open up a new screen, and a lot of times we would see failure after because they didn't see is this legit? Is this, they're not associated, it's not branded, none of that gave them comfort in donation. So in this project, we actually built in, using the Square's API, a donate form, and it leads them through the process. And one cool thing Jenny did with the design was added suggested donation amounts. So you could select $50, $100, $500, whatever, and then you fill out your information, and then it gives you the credit card stuff within the form, and then you can submit it. And it's that part has been very successful too, because people feel like it's a part of the site. There's not that disconnect, and it also feels nice and secure and safe for them to do that. So that was a huge piece of this. It's something that the foundation really wanted to solve for. So. And then I'll set this one up too, but this one is so tickets I mentioned earlier. This was our old page tickets design, and Jenny will talk about it a little more, but pretty bland, blue, whatever. And a lot of people would, it's not the best experience, not the best design, obviously, but tickets is a huge deal, obviously, for any sports organization. So we need to always have ways to show events that come up, or specials, or all kinds of things, but also make the site in a way that makes people feel welcome and a part of it, but also find all their ticket options easily. So Jenny, you can talk about the challenges here and some of the things that we solved for that one.
Yeah, one thing I want to mention too that I love about working with these guys is just that anytime we're starting something new, I'm usually like, hey, can we meet? And I don't know if they love that or not, but I love it because we can sit down at the table together and actually collaborate and say okay, what have you guys seen or heard, or what's frustrating about what you have? Talk to me about what's going on, because I feel the ways that I can best design an experience, while yes, considering everything Andy shared is super important, I also know that like these guys are the ones working on it, and then they're going to get requests from people to do certain things. So hey, what do you need it to do? What can it do that it doesn't right now? Like, because I want to make sure that I'm solving the design problem, the visual, you know, is important, but also that it's functional and that it makes their jobs easier too. So I love that about working collaboratively. So here you'll see kind of the visual update. As Andy mentioned, the thing that I really felt drawn to design was an experience that me, as a huge fan of the Pacers, and I come to all the games, like I want to feel like when I land on this ticketing page, that I feel like I could see myself attending the games, that I could see myself in this page. Like I'm a part of the team, they want me there, I want to be there. So wanting to make sure that we created that, and so obviously doing like a banner like this where we could integrate a lot of the fans. We've even talked about obviously time constraints keep us from doing every idea that we have at the beginning, but the cool thing is once this is built, now we have the chance later to potentially come in and have these fans like switch in and out. So you come here and you see different people, or maybe they fade and you see different ones as you're sitting on the page. So things that can continue to enhance the experience and create interest. And then, you know, utilizing what structure had already been done. So you saw the original had 4 boxes across. Like how can we make these more engaging and more interesting and more exciting? So pulling in color and imagery and some variance in the shapes and bringing in brand elements, as Andy mentioned, is super important. I think I've really found in my experience that it's definitely a challenge to figure out how can you bring in elements of a brand that is mostly seen in a flat space that you just look at, that doesn't have to be interacted with, like an arena, like brochures, like swag, like merchandise, like jerseys. How can you bring in all of those elements into an online experience while still making it usable, and the readability is really important and accessible, and people can get where they need to go. So it's been a cool balance of like working with these guys collaboratively to figure a lot of that out, and also just like a lot of playing. So we also kind of did these like visual graphics for different theme nights and family nights. And then you're seeing here how we kind of developed the page within here. So you click on season tickets, it brings you here, and you kind of have the ability to then toggle between some different things, which Zach did a great job of bringing that to life, having a way to get back, and then starting to kind of develop what each of these pages looks like further. So again, like bringing a video front and center where people can kind of see themselves in the action, and then giving them a lot of really important information below that. So is there anything you want to talk to development-wise on that?
Yeah, so one of the things that this like big rebrand of all of our ticket pages was a big part of is that this is kind of a new like design language we're going to be using throughout the entire site. And so what we wanted to do is like when I was looking through like the designs, Jenny gave us the design of all the different pages. There's so many different pages of like each of these are different plan in the season tickets. So thinking through like, okay, how can we break these all into components? Because to make our maintenance easier, we don't want to have to manually go to each page and update every single thing. So how can we create components that we can reuse throughout the site that aren't specific to one specific page? So that was a big part of trying to make each of these components flexible. So I'm like, okay, how can I create those cards down at the bottom? We use those same that card component for our theme nights page, and then we can use those for any kind of other use case. And so really throughout every page, I try to think of, okay, how can I make this block or component as flexible as possible? And that way we can use it in the future of not just like, maybe we don't use it for ticket pages, we use it for a different element on the home page or something like that. So that was a big part of this whole redesign as well, is that just trying to make things as reusable as possible, and just thinking through looking design, okay, I can take this section and break that into components. This could be in its own section, I'll break that into components. So it's really thinking through of, once you get the design, how can you bring it to life, but also make the development like the most efficient and reusable and easy to maintain in the future. That way we don't create tech debt and all that kind of thing of like, if we do want to update the colors in the future, do we have to go through every single thing and update every single color? Like that would be a pain. And so as much as we can reuse those components as possible, it just makes our lives easier, and it makes like updating things faster, it makes redesigns faster, So just really trying to think through this whole redesign is how to make the development easy, but also trying to make sure that the design is brought to life as well. So it's like a lot more work on the front end, but it makes our lives for the rest of this design process a lot easier.
Does that come out of a design system, or like do you prototype any of that stuff ahead of time, or does that kind of come from you as far as, I don't know, there's a lot of different methods out there that use that method or something else?
Yeah, I think when we started going through this, we thought, you know, when I first saw the design, I thought, man, this actually is a good foundation for our own design system. So a lot of the components that she designed were very, like, they're scalable, they're you know, we can put them anywhere, and like if we thought, oh, we need something where we need like a big headline, just text and a call to action, but nothing else, you know. So Jenny kind of created some options and some components for that. And so really our goal too with this whole thing is to kind of continue building that library out as our own design system, but fully custom design system from our end. And then we're building out some entertainment pages right now. Zach's working on that. Jenny's designed that, and some of that's based off of this, some reusable design components, but there'll be some new components that will be added to that where we can insert and use those anywhere on the site. So
I think something too that I've just found super important when I'm creating the design is the versatility of it. So like Andy's talking about, like I've seen a lot of designs that have been created for the web where there's so many elements and pieces and they all layer on top of each other, and while those may look super cool and interesting, they create a really difficult challenge for how do those things move on mobile, and how do they change if someone takes out one of those elements. Like if they didn't have, say they needed 4 of these instead of 6 or 5 or something, like how do you take one out? Like some designs I've seen, you take one out and the whole thing breaks. So you're trying to think about solving a problem here a little bit. It's like, I want to solve for the fact that we need these elements, but if these are removed, could this still work without that? I think that's been super important. I just think that when you're designing for print versus when you're designing for web or any other medium, it's so different that you really have to consider the way it's going to be used, how it's going to be built, and can it change if one thing pulls away. So I think even some of the designs I do, these guys will check me a little bit and be like, well, but we need it to do this. And I'm like, you're right, okay. Well, we need to pull this out and move this around so that it will be more versatile across the board. So I think that's really important. I think that helps aid in that system too. So.
And as far as specific like design tools, I don't think we've mentioned this, but we use Figma. So like Jenny will create the design in Figma, and then Figma has like a dev mode, so we can click on specific elements and look at like, it'll just give us, okay, here's the exact like pixels, here's the exact color, like hex code. So that kind of helps us development wise. And then in Figma, we're collaborating like, oh, hey Jenny, can you create another version of this? Like, can you mock up a mobile version? Because I'm trying to figure out, I'm not really seeing how this is gonna work on mobile. And then she creates that, I'm like, okay, now I get the vision. So yeah, we're constantly collaborating in Figma. Like, okay, can you create this? Can you modify this? What about this? So that's where we're sharing a lot of our ideas and collaborating on the design.
And you may have mentioned this, but this is React.
Yeah, this is also React. Yeah. So there's a lot of the same tools we showed in that first development slide. This is all React, Next.js, Bootstrap, Sass. Those are all the main tools that we use for this.
So I think the last thing we kind of just, we're going to touch on here a little bit is just some of the things we kind of learned in working together. We kind of thought each of us would kind of talk about one thing. So maybe you want to talk to collaboration a little bit, or you want me to talk to that?
Go for it.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I kind of mentioned this a little bit already, but I think it's super important to utilize the skill sets of the people around you. So I know what I am good at, and sometimes learning new things is great too, and at least having an understanding of what these guys do is super helpful, because I can't design unless I know how it's going to be translated. But I also know that I am not the developer, nor should I be, and these guys are super skilled and talented at what they do. So I think just relying on the people around you that are really talented at what they are skilled at has been something I've definitely learned. And I think just pulling other people in when you have questions or don't know, hey, can you bounce the site, like let's bounce ideas off each other. I'm thinking this, does that make sense? it just helps to get outside of your own brain and be surrounded by other people who are really talented. That kind of blends a little bit into creativity. It's just like coming up with new ideas and always thinking different. I think the times we get stuck in like the same things over and over is when stuff starts to feel mundane and like the same, we've seen it already, but trying to just like think outside the box and then rein it back in when you need to is something I found super helpful. I don't know if you want to talk about engineering a little bit.
Yeah, so ingenuity, like a lot of development is like a lot of problem solving. So a lot of times it's like, okay, we like Shopify, we ran into a lot of constraints of like, we can't get just control like we can React, of just like we can control where everything is placed and all that. So we had to think of like, okay, how can we put elements on the page in a certain way, and that way in CSS we can kind of style those elements how we want it to look and still match the design. And a lot of that problem solving process, a lot of trial and error, kind of like we mentioned, is just running into like finding the constraints and then seeing like, okay, how can I manipulate this to kind of make this work better? And a lot of that like collaboration comes in part too, is because I'm very much development focused and Jenny's very much design focused, but then Andy's been in both worlds, and so he kind of helped translate sometimes between both of those worlds of like, okay, here's what if we tried this, and that way like it brings in that design element, but here's a development tool that we can use to kind of make that thing work. So all of these definitely blend together as we're working together. There's a lot of problem solving and then a lot of creativity as well.
All right, I think that's all we got. So thank you for being here. Does anybody have questions we can answer?
What was the most challenging? Like when you were working on I understand your collaboration was great, so I think it was a good, good piece, but what was the most challenging for you as a designer and for you guys as developers?
Yeah, foundation was a huge jump for us.
Yeah.
Because we were solving for some branding issues, but also we just needed a whole content refresh. And so I hired a content person, and we had to have multiple entities all lean into this thing, and get everybody on the same page and get everybody working together, but also to be able to present the message that our foundation team wanted. And so also working with that group to try to bridge all of those gaps. I'm not like a natural project manager, so it's a little bit for me it's a stretch for me to kind of be in the middle of all that. But so that was a big jump for us. And Jenny really helped with that design piece just to solve a lot of those issues and give us some room to be able to tell the story better. So
I think for me, from a design perspective, generally like the storytelling and the flow of the page and all that kind of comes pretty easily to me. The difficult part was kind of finding this balance of like wanting the website to be so clean and simple and white space everywhere, because that just makes it so much easier for things to move around and for these guys to develop. So like that would be like, in an ideal state of a brand new website I'm making, I might lean a lot more that way versus the Pacers brands, which if you've seen them on social media, in the arenas, they're detailed and they have a lot of elements and a lot of graphic assets, which is super helpful and important for a brand like the Pacers, like the Fever. But that to translate that to a website that you want to be really clean and simple and minimal is really difficult. So I think that was the hardest challenge for me. I was constantly like checking my own work. Like I'd design something and then I'd be like, is this feel on brand enough? Is there enough brand elements in this thing? Okay, maybe not. So how could I bring one more thing in? Or is this too much? Do I have too many elements that I'm trying to work in? Let's pull something out. So I was constantly adding or removing things to find that right balance so that it would work well, it would be something that could be really usable and accessible, but it felt like the brand translated to web. Because I just think that when you're thinking about brand and design as a whole, there's different, like I kind of mentioned, every element of the brand is going to take on a slightly different look and feel as long as they all collaborate together and work cohesively. I think that's important because the use case for it, is different every time. So.
Yeah, I think another piece we touched on that a little bit too is like as much, like when we put our heads together and create this awesome solution to something, like as much as we would love to just live in our own world and just run with our own ideas, we have to take the ideas back to our ticketing team and like, okay, and like, oh, they provide feedback of like, oh, well, we also need this to be a thing. And we're like, oh, and we didn't know that. And we didn't know that was a thing that was needed. So now we have to go back and like, okay, now we need to rethink the design a little bit. How else can we add that solution? So it's a lot of like cross-departmental collaboration too, of like, as much as we're collaborating, we always have to go back to the department and be like, okay, what other needs do you need met that we need to think of before we start building or start designing? So that's a huge piece too. We're constantly collaborating with different teams that these pages affect and that who are the main people who are using these pages. So like our ticketing team are using these pages to like sell tickets, like give these to potential fans and all that kind of thing. So they're the ones who use it the most, and so we obviously want to cater to them of like what they like tool-wise, what would be the most functional, and then we can kind of take that tool and then make it creative and make it look fun as well.
I have a question. Yeah, I think one of the things that impressed me about like the FIFA Stranger Things design is that like it's very cohesive with the entire project, because like obviously you guys were doing on the web dev side, but like the entire thing is a lot bigger than that, and you guys were still able to like kind of incorporate this high level vision of what that collaboration looks like. So like, you know, you talked about it being very dark, like, you know, the black is like a huge element of that, and incorporating the gradient, you know. And so that indicates a level of collaboration, because, you know what the design is, and you want it to be cohesive with the other, you know, the arena designs, the jersey designs, everything else. What was that process like? Did you have to collaborate with like, you know, other teams or other departments in order to make sure like the entire thing looked really cohesive, so that someone on the outside couldn't tell that it was a different team doing that?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I can touch on my experience, and then these guys maybe a little bit too, but from what I have learned, I try to just get as many people involved as possible. So there's an entire creative brand team within Pacer Sports and Entertainment that's kind of overseeing at a high level. But to your point, it's really hard to see everything all the time. And so I think it's a level of trust in the people that you're working with, that, you know, they create style guides that have all the elements and details, all the fonts, the colors, everything. So I think that's super important, which, you know, when I'm creating a brand, I do the same thing. So creating a document that you can give to people that at least says, here's the do's and don'ts that I can give you tangibly, which isn't everything, but that's some. And then I think just like always having a brand eye to say like, hey, I really want this to feel like everything else. So I would constantly look at photos of, this is what the court's gonna look like, and this is what this is gonna, like, I would ask for all that stuff. Can I see everything? I probably, annoyingly, I was like, can you send me this? Can you ask for this? Can you get this? Or I'd reach out to their team. I'm a contractor, so technically I work through them, but I'd ask for as much as I could, so that I could see everything, and then just really constantly rechecking. Hey, does this look like this? Does this look like this? Does this give off the same feeling? Like more so than just the design elements, but the overall feeling, because the design elements can change as long as the whole thing feels on brand. And then also just like, I think we designed it and then we sent it to the creative team to say like, hey, can you look at this? Like, I think not feeling so like prideful or selfish that like, I designed this, I don't want to change anything, but no, actually it's more important, exactly what you said, that everybody else feels like it was all created by the same team. So if they tell me they want something changed, like, and I think it works well, like, let's change it, you know? So I think just opening up to hearing that feedback and being willing to change your things around, not feel so like tightly lipped to those that like you can't let go of it if they feel like something needs to adjust or change.
And Jenny's really good at that. But like because I had to send it to Netflix and then also internal team. And so Netflix initially came back with like a PDF of like this, you know, pointing out all these things, and I'm like, okay, I gotta give this to Jenny, like, you know, because she's gonna have to, and she received it well.
I was
so
like, oh yeah, that's great,
to
let's
have
do it.
yeah, to have the humility to you know, be able to navigate that is really important. But yeah, but there were multi levels in that whole arrangement. So
That's awesome.
yeah.
Yeah, I feel like that feedback goes both ways too. Like a lot of times, even just like for like ticket pages or the other pages, like a lot of times like we'll build something out and Jenny's like, oh, I think it'd look better if like we tweak this. Now that I see it like live and it's built out, we tweak this. He's very much like, if you're just like, hold on, like I really like the way I did it. It's like, that's not, like a lot of times I change it and I'm like, oh, actually that does look better. Okay, so I should probably listen to Jenny. But yeah, that's like a huge part of like, there's a lot of feedback back and forth of like, we'll give feedback to Jenny, Jenny will give feedback to us. Like it's constantly an evolving thing. So it's just like, you kind of have to just like know that like we're all pushing for something better. And so you just kind of have to put that, like what Jenny was saying, like you can't just be like, oh, this is the thing I created. It has to say the exact same way I created it. So.
It's cool to look back and see the first version of something I did and then the final version, because I keep all the iterations in my files. It's so much better. Whatever we end on is so much better than what I created to begin with that I thought was really great and cool. But like I don't know, it's so much better when you get to the end product and like things have been tweaked or altered or stuff's been changed. It's more functional, looks better, like all of that. So even though in the moment it may seem like I don't want to change that, but he's like, I want to add this thing, and I was like, oh, really? Do we have to? And I'm like, no, okay. And then I do it and it looks great. So, you know, so it's just like things like that. Yeah, it's cool to look back and see. So.
All right, I think we're probably at time here, so give them some appreciation. Thank you all so much, and like I said, sorry about the weather hijacked some of our crowd, but we'll definitely have the video out for them to check it out, and appreciate you coming.
Yeah,
Great.
thank you guys
Of
for
course.
coming.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.